We are living in the new normal. Times are changing, and there are challenges.
But our communities are finding ways to carry on. Lines of communication are stronger than ever.
While we are physically apart,
We are virtually together.
essential workers are on the front lines for us day in and day out.
They are the glue that holds our communities together.
It takes a village, and we are all trying to do our part. We are striving to keep you connected during this uncertain time. We're all in it.
All together now.
Hello Nutanix community, and a very warm welcome to the first ever global .NEXT Digital Experience. I'm Georgie Barrat, I'm a tech journalist and broadcaster, and I'm going to be your host for the .NEXT General Session and After Hours .NEXT shows. In the audience today, we've got visionaries, we have IT practitioners, developers, leaders. Yes, my friends, we are all in excellent company. And we're going to be sharing and getting hands-on with leading edge data center, hybrid and multi-cloud technologies. Over the course of the event, we really hope that you're going to immerse yourself in panel discussions and talks, one-on-one sessions and networking that will enable you to modernise your data centres, improve productivity and gain a competitive edge. You're going to be hearing product updates and best practices from a cast of very familiar faces, both inside and outside of Nutanix. So settle in as you're going to learn how you can run better, run faster and run anywhere. So first up, let's set the stage for .NEXT by learning about what it takes to thrive in this new normal. It's an honour for me to introduce founder and CEO of Nutanix, Dheeraj Pandey.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. The last 6 months has not been easy for any one of us. For us to really go and focus on personal health, family well-being, and really understanding what it means to excel at work is a lot to have asked for. So really appreciate you folks being here with us in this special version of .NEXT, our mega event that we do once a year. Today I'm going to talk about history and learn a little bit from history because, as I mentioned, history doesn't repeat, but it definitely rhymes. And we can look at the last 20, 30 years of IT to learn from history, to really surmise on what the next 10 years could hold for us. So as we've all been going through this pandemic, a unique thing has happened. And that unique thing is how it's accelerated digital transformation. We are talking a lot more about hands-free IT and business continuity and disaster recovery and bursting to the cloud and streaming an entire office environment to our people's homes. All of this has happened in the last 6 months. If anything, it's compressed probably 5 to 10 years of digital transformation into the last 6 months. So kudos to all of you for really having reacted to the thing that was thrown at us in the last 6 months. And in many ways, it's going to change the way we live and work. I mean, the future of IT, future of work is changing. Future of healthcare with telemedicine and such is going to change in rapid ways. And future of education, all of these things are up for reinvention, and all because of what happened just in the last 6 months alone. So I want to look back to really look ahead. This is not just the future of Nutanix, it's where we're headed in the next 3 to 5 years, but also where the industry is headed over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. So look back, 1995, 2005, we shrunk computing, we brought it from mainframe to Unix servers, but finally from Unix servers to Intel x86 and Microsoft, and also to Linux. There was a huge proliferation of small servers. There was servers under every desk. There were appliances in the network everywhere. We talked about autonomy. We created autonomy. When we made things smaller, we created that autonomy. And what happened was chaos reigned. But then, we finally realized we need to bring in some sanity with governance. We wanted to rein in that chaos. And that's when we started talking about consolidation. We consolidated servers in these beautiful data centers. We consolidated storage. We virtualized a lot. We virtualized compute, we virtualized storage. We began to virtualize networking in this era of 2005 through 2015. We seeded hyperconverged infrastructure in this era. In the last 10 years, something similar happened. Yet again, a lot of autonomy. There were DR sites, there were remote office branch offices, there were mergers and acquisitions where people really didn't reconcile everything down to one. There was a huge proliferation of data centers. And what we have seen in the last 5 and what we'll continue to see in the next 5 is going to be this notion of consolidation. Bring it down to a few, rein in that chaos with one-click private cloud. And what we have been seeing in the last 5 years, and what we will continue to see in the next 5 years, is yet another form of autonomy that's going to really let chaos reign. A proliferation of clouds, a proliferation of cost centers, proliferation of everything being done through credit cards. We have things at the edge, we have things in the core private cloud, we have things in different kinds of public clouds. And the real opportunity for the companies to figure out, can we go and govern this? Can we really rein in that chaos? Can we bring in this ubiquitous piece of software that runs anywhere and everywhere? Can we go consolidate the clouds with this idea of one-click hybrid cloud? Can we bring a singular experience between private and public in the edge with a very seamless, very simple, very secure software that we'll come to call a one-click hybrid cloud experience? And that's the journey of the next 10 years. We think that what we've learned over the last 20 years, we need to go and repeat this, make this rhyme in the next 10 years. So what do we mean by consolidation? In the classic Nutanix terms, it's really about the power of 3. We virtualize everything. We make everything into pure software: compute, storage, networking, security. And by doing that, we have now made it mobile. We can now move them from any one location to another. We can drag and drop things, an entire data center, from one location to another, with this power of not just app mobility, but data center mobility. And finally, we've got to go standardize them, standard skill sets. We don't need to have people who only know Amazon, who only know Azure, who only know private cloud. It's the same team. We've converged the notion of having a single team that does everything, and also standardize on user experience across on-prem and off-prem. So what's HCI delivered for us in the last 10 years? It's really been about consolidating all the hardware with pure software, which we now call one-click infrastructure. What it's done in the last 5 and will continue to do in the next 5 is about really consolidating data centers with this idea of one-click private cloud. But where we think it's supposed to head is this notion of one-click hybrid cloud, consolidating all clouds with a singular experience, with skill sets that people can actually use both on-prem and off-prem. So now that we know the why of hybrid cloud infrastructure, let's define the what. Hyperconvergence is the foundation that's really becoming a platform. It doesn't just do VMs and virtualized storage for VMs and containers and operations management. It's running pretty much everything as an app, filers and object storage, DR automation, DR sites, a ton of things that we're doing for databases. Database as a service and platform as a service is running on top of HCI. And finally, digital desktops, both VDI and desktop as a service. All of it running on both sides of the aisle, on the private cloud side as well as the public cloud side. That is the definition of hybrid cloud infrastructure. So how do we make this HCI, this hybrid cloud infrastructure, even more real? We made an announcement a few weeks ago with AWS, and we feel it's time to really take it up a notch. What about running all of Nutanix inside Azure? That's the thing that really excites us, that now we have 2 of the powerhouses, the hyperscaler powerhouses on which we're running all our software. Same experience on both sides of the aisle, portable licenses, being able to run not just Nutanix, but also be able to connect to native Azure services, AI and ML and storage and everything else that Azure has come to deliver, all through a single bill, single identity, and that singular experience that we all crave for in terms of what it means to have same software run on both sides of the aisle. So that's the big deal. That's the thing that we want to really go talk about with all of you over the course of this conference, to really take hybrid cloud infrastructure to the next level. And with that, I want to thank you all for being here. Let's go and explore the new HCI. It's beyond hyperconvergence. It's really about hybrid cloud infrastructure. It's about building apps faster, simpler, and to really write them once so you can run them anywhere. Let's go explore what it means to run better, run faster, and run anywhere. I know we've talked about what this global pandemic has done to the future of work, future of healthcare, but also to the future of education. To talk a lot about that, I'm here to welcome Secretary Condoleezza Rice, who has been a great counsel to all of us over the last several years, and our Chief Operating Officer, David Sangster. Thank you.
Thank you, Dheeraj. My next guest is Dr. Condoleezza Rice, who has had a long and distinguished career in public service. Many of you already know this, but what you may not know is that she's also a distinguished educator. She's currently a professor of political science at Stanford University, and also the Denning Professor in Global Business and Economy at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And it's in this capacity as an educator that I'm honored and delighted to be here with Dr. Rice to talk about the future of education. Dr. Rice, welcome.
Pleasure to be with you, Dave.
Okay, so let me kind of frame up our discussion here, Condi. So COVID has turned the world as we know it upside down, and education in particular has been particularly hard hit, right? We've seen both education institutions and students around the world who are really struggling with trying to cope with this new norm, whether it be a hybrid learning model or perhaps distance learning. That chapter has not yet been written, but what has been written is that the pandemic is forcing a global experimentation with remote teaching on a scale that is unprecedented and just unbelievable at this point. So my question to you is, given this new norm and your long experience as an educator, how are educational institutions adapting to enable and enrich the learning experience for students? How should they think about this?
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for this conversation. It's a critically important question for every level of education, from K through 12 through college education through graduate school. How do we think about this new normal? Let me just start by saying that this is a trend that was coming for some time. I'm very often asked, is this a revolution or is this an evolution? Well, a revolution is what happens when you didn't see an evolution coming. And in fact, this evolution has been underway because I believe that educators and educational institutions had a little bit of a head in the sand approach when it came to technology and to distance learning. And now, because of COVID-19, everything has sped up, everything's been accelerated, and now we're going to have to cope with these new technologies very, very rapidly. And you're right, it's a lot of experimentation, it's a lot of hit and miss. When you are faced with new circumstances, you kind of make it up on the fly, and that's what we're seeing. Whenever we have a big revolution like this, technological revolution, I think it's important to recognize that technology is neutral. It can be good or it can be bad. So let's talk for a moment about the elements of remote learning that could really be an answer to some of our biggest challenges in education. One is, if done right, we could start to overcome some of the inequalities in education. Kids who live in remote, more rural areas and perhaps don't have access to really good schools. We could think about the circumstances of places where it's hard to get teachers to go. So you could see, if you use the technology correctly, if everybody has access to it, and the ability to equalize educational opportunity. I also think the possibility for personalized learning is very, very strong. I was really good at algebra. I was really good at calculus. I could not make heads or tails of geometry. And the only reason that I passed geometry at St. Mary's Academy was the teacher would stay after school and help me. Well, suppose I had been able to do geometry with my own pacing. Very often we see in really big classes in calculus or chemistry 1 in universities that kids are kind of left being dragged along more rapidly than they understand the information being conveyed to them. You could imagine a slower pace for big introductory classes. So there are some advantages. But what are the potential downsides? Well, one potential downside is that we don't use the technology in the right way. So I've just mentioned it could be very good when you have a big class and you want to pace learning individually. But it's going to have to still be, if you're in a 20-person seminar in a university, that's still with a person in the room. And so finding the right mix of the so-called hybrid, I think, is one of the big challenges. And then the flip side of what I said about equality. I've been very concerned during this COVID crisis that we may actually be deepening and widening the gap in education, in K-12 education. I was actually homeschooled in first grade because the state of Alabama, in its wisdom, decided that if you weren't 6 by October 31st, you couldn't go to school for a year. Well, I was born November 14th. My parents were educators. There was no way I was going to miss the year in school. So my mother, actually, who was a teacher, took a year off and she homeschooled me. By the time I was done, I was probably 3rd or 4th grade because of her skill. But now think about the kid who's being homeschooled with the parent who maybe doesn't even speak the English language. And now you've got a wide gap between parents who can participate in their kids' learning, remote learning, and kids who can't. You've got the kid for whom school is a refuge from bad circumstances. So my real plea to all of us as we think through this is to be very careful in thinking about how we use remote learning, when we use it, when we make it a hybrid, and most importantly, that we work to make sure that we're not introducing further inequalities into an already unequal enterprise, particularly K-12 education.
You raise an interesting point about the deepening of the digital divide, which is another rich topic we should talk about at length in another forum. It's probably many hours worth of discussion. But the thing that also struck me was the fact that with remote learning, we're no longer experiencing the on-campus experience that we all seem to enjoy as college people. And how important is this sort of on-campus experience to the learning journey?
I think the on-campus experience is important in some ways, but I've never been one who believed that you just had to have 4 years on campus to grow up. And that's what some people that's how they talk about the on-campus experience sometimes. You're on campus to learn as rapidly as you can. And yes, of course, there are certain social elements to that, and learning what you're passionate about and finding what you're going to choose as a career path. All of those are very important. But again, we can imagine a circumstance in which a first year might be better spent as a gap year when students mature some. You know, in some countries, because you have to do military service, you really don't get to college until you're 20 or so and kind of know what you want to do. So I don't think it is for every kid, for every student, that the 4-year experience is an absolute necessity. There are a lot of great things about the 4-year experience. But let's be honest, the 4-year experience is also very expensive. And that's where you have a lot of kids who are taking down loans and taking down debt and graduating with more debt than they will ever be able to pay off. Maybe for some, 1 year in a gap year with virtual tools to learn, and then entering college when you're a little bit older with 3 years to specialize in life. Maybe that's a better model. What I'm really saying is that we're going to have to learn to be more flexible. We're going to have to learn to have a variety of learning possibilities for students that are really more tailored to the students' needs and to the students' need for certain kinds of experiences.
Dr. Rice, fascinating topic. Thank you so much for sharing with us your perspective on the future of education. As always, it's been a pleasure to host and to talk with you. So please stay safe during these challenging times. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was terrific. I always enjoy talking with Dr. Rice and learning from her experience and insights. Okay, let's flip to a video segment here. Technology has always been front and center when it comes to delivering education, and Nutanix continues to play its part by accelerating innovation in the educational area. We have a customer who is Florida Virtual School, and it's one organization that has leveraged Nutanix technology not only to transform its business, but also enable a rich and immersive learning environment for its students. And this next video with Teed Up will show you exactly how FLVS is changing the future of education with Nutanix.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. That was a great session with our COO, David Sangster, and Dr. Rice about future of education. So this next session is a very exciting session around future of healthcare. A very contextual session with this pandemic backdrop, and I have two phenomenal guests with me. One is a dear friend, Dr. Zafar Chowdhury, the CIO at Seattle Children's Hospital. And the other one is another dear friend, Sridhar Mullapudi, head of products, SVP of products at Citrix, whom we've been partnering with for a long time at Nutanix, and also a personal friend for many decades now. So this session is very important. Healthcare industry is going through tons of change. Every day we're hearing news, seeing news about the challenges we're facing through this pandemic. And these two guests are going to shed light into some of the things that we're working on to enable the healthcare industry to move forward with this pandemic backdrop into the future. So on that note, I'm going to bring Dr. Chowdhury. And by the way, Dr. Chowdhury, I'm going to call you Zafar. You're a dear friend. I'm going to drop the doctor for the conversation. So Zafar, based on all these things we talked about, we're seeing in other industries as well, like the education industry, the future of healthcare is changing, and I know this entire pandemic also forced you to change your thoughts and your vision and adjust. And now at Seattle Children's Hospital, how you're seeing this backdrop, this pandemic backdrop, and how you're changing your vision, your strategy, your execution for the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you for inviting me to the session. It is a pleasure to be here to talk to everyone about how healthcare has been impacted by COVID and how we've changed the way in which we deliver healthcare. So let's walk through this. So from a people perspective, what we've seen is patients, parents, caregivers wanting to consume healthcare in a very different way. They don't want to physically come to the hospital. So we've had to pivot the process to involve physicians communicating and working with and treating patients remotely using telehealth. From a staffing perspective, we've changed the way in which we allow people to work. So people are working remotely. In our organization, we have 4,000 people every day working remotely using our virtual desktop infrastructure supported by Citrix presentation layer. And before COVID, we didn't have anybody working from home. From a process point of view, we've had to rework how our people interact with each other on a daily basis, how we have team huddles, how we do group meetings. So we've used a lot of video conferencing, web conferencing technologies. From a patient perspective, we've stood up an entire telehealth service for all of our specialties. We've gone from 100 telehealth visits prior to COVID to 15,000 telehealth visits on a weekly basis during COVID. And then from a technology standpoint, we've done a lot of work to understand what infrastructure is required to make these things happen. We've got a hyper-converged infrastructure on Nutanix that runs a Citrix presentation layer that services over 4,000 people a day in real time. We've been able to maintain 5 nines uptime on that system, very stable. We've also combined and eliminated our data centers, so we're about 90% private cloud and 10% public cloud. We use the public cloud to run our research environment as well. So these are all the pivots and changes we've made.
Thank you, Zafar. And Sridhar, obviously, I want to bring you into the conversation. This is fascinating what Zafar is doing. From your perspective, Sridhar, as the head of products running strategy for Citrix, Citrix has written the book in end-user computing, secure virtual computing. How do you see, from Citrix perspective, the next 3 to 5 years pan out, both from a business and technology perspective?
Yeah, first, thanks, Tarkan, for inviting me to the Nutanix conference. Been working with Nutanix as a partner for a long time from a product perspective, and so excited to be here. Regarding the pandemic, obviously it changed everything for the healthcare, right? And it was unprecedented times. And Citrix has been a trusted advisor for both our healthcare customers, like as we talk to Seattle Children's Hospital and Dr. Zafar, but also the healthcare ISVs who are actually powering these applications for our healthcare customers. And if you think about the pandemic, we kind of seen like 2 phases. The first one, as we all know, was the crisis phase, right? I still distinctly remember kind of end of February, March, we're getting a lot of requests from our healthcare customers just to make sure we can support them as they're really preparing for this demand that is a little unpredictable at that time, right? And so what was really happening is some of our customers are setting up makeshift beds, and how do you provide secure access to these applications from a secure infrastructure, right? Infrastructure where the applications are running, as well as infrastructure in terms of endpoint devices and Wi-Fi locations, and any locations they're really making up these hospital beds. So it was definitely unprecedented. We worked a lot to help our customers scale their infrastructure, working with partners like Nutanix, as well as scaling our own Citrix cloud infrastructure to meet the demand of these customers. And now what we are seeing is the new normal phase, right? And essentially everybody's kind of planning for what is the post-vaccine world is going to look like. And I think it's pretty clear it's a hybrid work model where there's going to be a lot more employees and users kind of working from home or working anywhere situation than it was before the pre-COVID world. And essentially they're trying to build infrastructure that is flexible enough to meet the demands of the future, right? Because in healthcare especially, it's going to be more tele visits, more drive-by visits and others, and really what is the type of infrastructure you need both for running the applications as well as secure access to all these applications. And that's exactly what's kind of going through our customer mind. And last but not the least, how do you do it in a way that they still, have to deal with cybersecurity and all the security and compliance regulations that are there in the healthcare industry.
Thank you, Sridhar. Some of the things that you mentioned, actually, Zafar also tied into it. How does this new multi-cloud, so to speak, trends, all these trends, changing your approach? I'm sure that you're doing some of the workloads still on-prem because of the regulation reasons and security reasons, but you're also moving some workloads to off-prem. Can you a little bit drill down on those topics for us?
We've had to retrain people to think differently, to work virtually, and we've had to do the same in teaching our patients and parents and their caregivers to use the technology in different ways to interact with our doctors and nurses. And you also have to remember that with patients, there is an equity issue. So some patients have access to laptops and PCs and good internet connections, and other patients do not. So we've also have to set up kiosks in our clinics that we have. And to contextualize, Seattle Children's is a large health system. We have 46 sites across 4 states. So to help those patients and parents who don't have access to the right technology, we've set up kiosks in our clinics where they can come, socially distance, use the technology we provide to gain access to those consults. But at the same time, we've had to make sure that how do we secure all of this environment? So what we've seen is, yes, we have regulations like HIPAA, and there are federal regulations for our research. So we've had to secure our private cloud. We've had to make sure that the applications that run in the public cloud are secure. Most importantly, doctors and nurses are demanding much more uptime than ever before. We're needing to guarantee 5 nines uptime in our environments. We've been able to achieve that with our Nutanix HCI for VDI. The predominant workloads we run on hyperconverged is our virtual desktop, which then accesses all of our clinical, non-clinical applications, our ERP, our electronic health record. And then you mirror that and combine that with what capability you need from the cloud. So cloud works well for us when we want to ramp up processing power, crunching the human genome, big numbers. That's why we use it more for research than we do for real-time virtual desktops. And the entire 2 layers between private and public need to be seamless, and they need to be secure. So when you link that into the hospital of the future, what direction are we taking? What I can tell you is that the consumer wants more remote capability and access. They want to be able to ask our clinicians questions in real time. They want to be able to have apps available when they do visit our campus. So we are, in our digital portfolio, ramping up virtual televisits. We've ramped up remote patient monitoring. We've set up some apps that allow our staff to self-attest for COVID, because you have to do that now before you come to campus. Same thing is being made available to patients and parents. And I sort of see that post-COVID, we're only going to continue to ramp up virtual capability. In order to do that, I'm going to have to change how I deliver commodity IT services. So that's everything from a virtual desktop to email to mobility, because we'll have to go into schools, etc. And for that, I'm going to have to change how my infrastructure runs. And so moving to private cloud, combining with public cloud is phase 1. Phase 2 is how do we leverage the hyperconverged infrastructure that we have to deliver high performance against some of our critical clinical and non-clinical applications. So that'll be phase 2 of our master plan.
Zafar, thank you so much for your insights. I think you shed lots of light into all the aspects of people, process, and technology dimensions of what we're going through. So on that note, Sridhar, back to you. How do you see, based on also what we're hearing from Zafar, how do you see our partnership in the context of the ecosystem of vendors that Zafar deals with to achieve his goals from a business perspective can help? And how do you see us working together in better ways as we move forward into the next 3 to 5 years for our customers and partners?
Yeah, Tarkan, as you said, right, Citrix has been the innovator in the virtual desktops and in the workspace for a long time. And I would say Nutanix has been, the pioneer and the innovator starting in, hyper-converged infrastructure and now kind of going into a multi-hybrid cloud world. So, we've been partnering together on this joint solution for a long time. For the past 5 years, Citrix has been building, transitioning a lot of our customers to our cloud service. For example, the virtual apps and desktop service, one of the fastest growing services our customers have been adopting. In fact, Epic is one of the top 5 applications that our cloud service customers use to deliver using our technology, including Nutanix as the infrastructure for those workloads. Right? I can tell you one data point just within the past 12 months. For our Citrix Cloud customers using virtual apps and desktop service, the Nutanix workload has been growing about 250%, right? So I'm really excited to kind of see the joint growth of moving to cloud as well as, moving to Nutanix and providing customers the choice. And as you guys are kind of building out a hybrid and multi-cloud infrastructure, I think that gives our joint customers more flexibility in terms of where they want to put the workload and how they want to manage and flex it up and down. So I'm definitely looking forward for the joint collaboration as we jointly move our customers to a hybrid and multi-cloud environment.
Thank you for that, Sridhar. Just obviously that gives me more clarity, and we're looking forward to working with you, especially for our partners like Seattle Children's Hospital. Zafar, what can we do better as a vendor community? What are the other areas that you think that we can add more services around and partner better with you as we move forward?
So look, it's no secret that COVID has caused a financial crisis, and healthcare is not immune to that. So every healthcare organization in the United States, if not globally, has taken a massive financial hit in terms of revenue, in terms of can we keep up the numbers, the beds filled, the staff employed? So my plea to any tech vendor who is a true strategic partner, and I consider Nutanix to be one of our true strategic partners as well as Citrix, is how do we build more flexibility in the services that you offer, in the hardware that you offer, in the resources that you offer, and how can we flex those up and down? That's what we need to really make it through the other end of post-COVID.
Incredibly trying times, clearly. Zafar and Sridhar, thank you so much for this eye-opening conversation in this very important industry. And again, with this pandemic backdrop, you did not just talk about technology, but people, process, and technology aspects all together, which is really important for our customers and partners and our audiences. We really appreciate that.
Really interesting listening to those stories there. I guess it just really puts it into perspective how important the work is that you guys are doing. Okay, up next, we're going to be hearing from the founder of...
Hello, Georgie. Hey.
Hi, Trevor. Is that you? What are you doing here?
Hey, what's going on, Georgie? I'm Zoom bombing. That's what I'm doing. I just felt like crashing a Zoom whilst also learning about the enterprise cloud journey at the same time, whatever that is.
Well, I mean, you're always welcome to Zoom bomb me, but you do know that our show is actually tomorrow. We've got like all the performers and troops. It's a very big extravaganza going on.
Oh, yeah. The .next show tomorrow, the finale. No, I remember that. I mean, I cleared my calendar a long time ago, which wasn't hard. I haven't had anything on my calendar since March. I was just excited. I just want to say hi to you, just so you don't forget to call me tomorrow.
I wouldn't forget. Well, thank you so much for Zoom bombing me. Always a pleasure. I mean, of all people gate crashing your link, Trevor Noah has to be up there. We're going to be seeing loads more of him tomorrow for the .next show. Please don't miss it. It is going to be fantastic.
As I was talking about the global pandemic and the digital transformation that it has really engendered, the current macro conditions are shaping how we work, how we educate our future generations, and how we deliver healthcare with telemedicine and such, and how we provide innovative technology to support business continuity and business growth. In fact, Satya Nadella recently said that he's seeing 2 years worth of digital transformation happening in 2 months. Such is this era that we're living in. To discuss how technology continues to evolve as the foundation for this rapid disruption and innovation, it's my great pleasure to welcome Scott Guthrie, Executive Vice President for Cloud and AI at Microsoft. Welcome, Scott. What better way to start this team spirit than use Microsoft Teams to record this? Scott, how you and the team at Microsoft are navigating through this era of remote work, and tell us more about some of the key trends you're seeing that are impacting adoption of cloud technologies.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for the partnership. And obviously, we're living, all of us, in interesting times, and really over the last few months with COVID-19, I think we've really seen a number of economic, business, and technology factors that are really changing the way all businesses operate. And I think as part of that, we're seeing really either more cloud adoption being initiated or more cloud adoption programs being accelerated as organizations look to react to in this new changing environment that we're living in, and look to get more efficiency and ultimately save money. And we've obviously seen here at Microsoft, companies moving to more remote work, and we've seen a rapid adoption of things like Microsoft Teams, things like our Windows Virtual Desktop VDI service, and across the Microsoft Azure more broadly for infrastructure and apps. And at the same time, as we hear of organizations looking to move to the cloud, the thing that's top of mind obviously right now is how do you do it faster, and how do you leverage your existing skills and investments as you do it. And that really grounds people in wanting a hybrid strategy. And with Azure, we're really committed to how do we meet our customers where they're at today, and really give them the ability to embrace cloud at their pace and make it as easy as possible. How about you, Dheeraj? Curious, how are you seeing the market evolve given the current challenges you see your customers facing?
I so violently agree. I think what you said, you've got to walk over to where the customers are. Rather than have them walk over to where we are, we have to walk over to where the customers are. We use the word invisible computing. It's the fact that we have to really make it invisible. As you said, we see more and more customers having a cloud mix. A lot of customers see cloud as an operating model and are looking for managing those on their terms. We started with a very simple vision, a very profound and simple vision of making infrastructure invisible. And our true north has always been about providing customers with freedom of choice, which is really about write once, run anywhere philosophy. I personally believe, lift and shift can be made seamless. Were we to do it right together? This partnership can take us in so many exciting directions around using their existing Azure credits, running high-end database workloads, quickly building DR sites, and finally, bursting their, as you said, the virtual desktops during peak business season for temporary and remote workers. So with this partnership, customers can now deploy Nutanix clusters to Azure and manage their multi-cloud existence with really powerful but very singular experience between on-prem and off-prem. So with that, Scott, I'd love your perspective on our partnership. What excites you the most about what we have set out to do here?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said earlier, we're incredibly excited about the partnership. And I love the way that Nutanix and Microsoft are really working together with a shared goal of empowering our mutual customers, to choose the right approach and to really leverage their existing investments and really embrace a hybrid model to kind of really achieve their business needs. And whether it's around enabling continuity and resiliency, whether it's around creating cost efficiencies, or whether it's around modernizing and bringing new innovation to the business, in particular reacting to the new COVID environment and business challenges that it's bringing. And a lot of the customers that I've talked to recently, really, again, talk about the importance of preserving the existing investments that they have. This is not a time to, just go greenfield and say, let's spend infinite amounts of money to get an outcome. It's obviously we're all facing, the business challenges of COVID, and really looking at, again, how can we get to value as fast as possible and leverage those existing investments, whether it's around a data center, whether it's around hardware, whether it's around that hybrid footprint. And that's where I think our partnership is so aligned and really focused on what customers are looking for.
We're in this baton zone where we're trying to flip the meaning of HCI from hyper-converged infrastructure to this new thing called hybrid cloud infrastructure that we're building together. Tell us about your understanding of this new HCI.
Yeah, well, I think from a, as we think about what that looks like, I think, enabling Nutanix on Azure is going to allow customers to take advantage of, that cloud scalability and elasticity, without change or complexity. And it's going to enable that same operational consistency that you're familiar with Nutanix, by being able to run Nutanix natively on Azure, again, using the same skills, the same tools that you're familiar with. And the beauty about that is over time, you can then also leverage and use all of the other services that Azure provides as well. And so that ability to use, for example, our platform services, our ability to use some of our IoT services and use some of the other AI services that we have together with your Nutanix workloads, I think, again, gives more flexibility, more options, and really enables you to take the skills you already have and supercharge them even more. And then together, we're also doing some great work so that not only can you run Nutanix in Azure data centers, but you can also take our Azure services through something we call Azure Arc and run them on your existing on-premises Nutanix infrastructure as well. And with Azure Arc, we really enable customers to deploy Azure services anywhere and extend key control plane functionality, things like role-based access control and audit in a completely hybrid-based way. And I think it's just incredibly exciting what we have enabled now. But when you look ahead towards this coming year, I think there's just a tremendous amount that we're going to be able to drive together from a partnership, and really excited to see what we can do.
Thank you. And thank you for walking with us to where our customers are, and then walk with them to where we want them to be. Let's take a look at how this will all work. Let me welcome Laura Jordana, a longtime Nutant for almost 10 years, a quintessential builder, a TME, a technical marketing engineer who has had diverse roles in this company, evolving her leadership with the evolving company. Laura, give us your perspective on how HCI becomes the new HCI, hybrid cloud infrastructure, with this Azure differentiation.
Thank you all for joining us today. Let's take a look at some of these features in a live demo to see how the Nutanix and Azure clouds come together to form a unified hybrid cloud, and see how easy it is to deploy, manage, and burst additional capacity without having to do a new data center build out. So let's say I'm an IT admin working for an e-commerce company. I get a ping from my CIO and he wants a new data center operational on the East Coast in 2 months as our company is growing rapidly in that geography. Being a current Microsoft customer, I can go straight to the Azure Marketplace to launch Nutanix clusters on Azure. I can either use my existing Nutanix investments by porting my existing licenses over, or procure Nutanix software directly from Azure, leveraging my cloud budget to account towards both hardware and software. Next, I can configure my Azure account in the Nutanix cluster portal by providing the details of my Nutanix clusters app registration and select the regions where I want to deploy my clusters. Once my account is added, I can begin the provisioning process. I'll select my cloud account and the East US region, and I'm able to use my existing VNets and subnets, which were automatically discovered, without having to create new ones. I'll provide the details of my cluster, such as the number of nodes and the Nutanix software version, review my selections, and click Create. The provisioning process takes about 45 minutes, and once it's complete, I'll be able to seamlessly expand my apps across on-prem and the cloud. In the meantime, let's jump into a cluster that's already running on Azure. From here in the Clusters portal, I can jump into the Nutanix Prism UI directly and see that this is a Nutanix cluster running on an Azure Nutanix Ready node. I can configure all of my clusters on-prem or in the cloud from a single Prism central interface. Meanwhile, I've reported back to the CIO that our hybrid cloud will be up and running within an hour, and he is impressed and very happy. With Nutanix clusters on Azure, we're able to leverage native Azure networks. Your Nutanix user VMs will get low latency, direct access to cloud-native services without any overlay layer. Here I am in the Azure portal, where I can configure my virtual networks. So we can see we're using address space 10.70.0.0/16, and I have a connected device on that network. Back in the Prism UI, we can see that our Nutanix user VM is connected to this network with the same native Azure IP. A key feature of Nutanix is being able to clone VMs quickly. I'm expanding my app, so I'm spinning up an additional 50 VMs. However, this is only a single node cluster. So what if I need more resources once I power all these VMs on? Another benefit of the solution is being able to quickly spin up additional capacity on the fly through the clusters portal. This could also be automated with Prism Pro's XPlay feature. Let's say I want to modernize my VM-based apps and containerize them. With Azure Arc, I can manage my Kubernetes clusters running on Nutanix Karbon or elsewhere. Arc can also be used to manage servers or data services. With Nutanix Karbon, I can easily spin up Kubernetes clusters from within Prism, and we can see my e-commerce app running here on the default port 80. I can use Azure Arc to manage my Karbon cluster along with any other Kubernetes clusters I might have, regardless if it's on my Nutanix hybrid cloud or elsewhere. I can do things like get insights on the infrastructure, see the health of the nodes, and much, much more. With Azure Arc and GitOps integration, I can make a change to my application and have it automatically applied to all my managed Kubernetes clusters. Again, whether they're running on-prem in my hybrid cloud or cloud native. So with a single git push, I can make a change to updating the service port that will be applied across all of my clusters. And since I'm now leveraging cloud native capabilities, I want to take advantage of cloud storage technology such as object storage. So we can see that I'm using Azure Blob Storage here. And from a Nutanix VM running on Azure, I have direct access to this blob storage and can access my container directly, manage it, and upload files to it. With Nutanix clusters on Azure, you can move your application from on-prem to cloud without any refactoring needed, keeping your existing integrations intact. This also applies in a DR scenario. So let's say I'm running my web servers as VMs here, and I get an alert that my data center connectivity is down. But since I've already created a protection policy and a recovery plan from within Prism Central, I can easily perform an unplanned failover of these VMs and have them up and running in my Azure cluster with just a few clicks. So even though my app is now unavailable on-prem, it's up and running on an Azure public IP. And before my CIO even realizes there's been an outage, we're already up and running without him needing to approve any new budget, since we were able to leverage our existing Azure commitments. So with Nutanix clusters on Azure, there's no need to wait months to set up a new data center. Microsoft customers can leverage their existing MAC contracts to procure hardware and software, as well as leverage their Azure hybrid benefits and extended security updates for use on Nutanix clusters. We're excited for this partnership and looking forward to helping you build your hybrid cloud with Nutanix clusters on Azure. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks again for showing us the power of Invisible. Simple, secure, seamless, as we forge the two user experiences into one. Scott, if there's one takeaway for our listeners who are looking at different solutions for the hybrid cloud needs, what would that be from your side?
I think, together, Nutanix and Microsoft are really enabling simplicity of hybrid and really the choice of managing these hybrid workloads in a very flexible way that enables you to reuse your existing investments and resources and really accelerate your progress. And I'm incredibly excited by the partnership and looking forward to working with a lot of the people here watching together in the year ahead.
Thank you, Scott. Simple is hard. I say simplifying things takes immense energy. Together, Microsoft and Nutanix will expend that energy to really make the lives of our customers simple. Thank you for the great discussion and partnership, and really for sharing your perspective on how this will really benefit our customers to make computing invisible. Let me now turn over all of this and see how this translates with our partnerships and with commerce in the field, with our field staff and our partner sales. Here, one of our presentations with LENOVO.
It's an exciting announcement between Nutanix, Microsoft, and our collaboration here at LENOVO, because we've had customers that have always wanted the benefits of the public cloud on-prem as well. So some of the people want an as-a-service metered offering, and we're offering that through something called LENOVO TrueScale Infrastructure Services now. So you can get a metered pay-as-you-go approach and move from a CapEx, OpEx model on-prem, as well as working on the public cloud. And because Lenovo is a public cloud supplier to 7 of the top 10 hyperscalers in the world, we can now kind of start bridging that to deliver that hybrid cloud world. And we know one size doesn't fit all, so Lenovo Professional Services is here ready to help customers through that journey.
So picking up from where we left off, this is going to come down to customers. So we have with us Chris Kadaris, our EVP of Worldwide Sales. Thank you, Chris, for being here. Chris, you and your team are obviously very close to our 17,000 plus customers. What do you think this means to them?
Thanks, Dheeraj. Yeah, I'm very excited for our customers and for our partners. As you know, a large number of our customers are Microsoft Azure customers as well. And they've been asking, what can Nutanix and Microsoft do to help them utilize existing investments in Azure credits and easily facilitate the ability to lift, shift, and manage their workloads? I've seen that our customers are more and more viewing cloud not as a destination, but as an operating model. And I think they see HCI, and we do as well, as a killer app to empower them on this cloud adoption journey. Now, I also, very much agree with what Scott said, that this is a huge step in adding optionality and freedom of choice for our customers. Our customers were already able to choose any hardware for their workload, but now with recent announcements, they can choose multi-cloud as one of the underlying routine or runtime infrastructure choices for them.
Thank you. This is so well said, Chris. And I really appreciate how you're helping with our digital transformation, you and your team with subscription and now cloud, and really flipping HCI from hyperconverged to hybrid cloud infrastructure. Talking about our customers who themselves are going through this digital transformation, let us now listen to one of our customers of the last 5+ years, Societe Generale, on a global financial services company. Thank you.
Another exciting segment at .next today. And I'm so happy to have two dear friends on this segment. One is our very own Monica Kumar, head of our product marketing and solutions and partnerships for our business. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Tarkan.
Thank you for being here, Monica. And obviously, very importantly, we have a dear friend, Khaled Soudani of Societe Generale, also known as SocGen in US circles. Khaled is the CTO at SocGen. And Khaled, thank you for joining us all the way from beautiful Paris. Hi, Khaled.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Great to have you with us today. SocGen globally is a multinational bank and obviously one of the leaders in financial services industry. And obviously we have this difficult pandemic backdrop in the world at a global scale. So maybe, Khaled, how do you see your priorities as a financial service leader in the world?
Thank you, Tarkan. First of all, I would like to wish all our colleagues, our partners, our clients, good health and wellness in these difficult times. 2020 has been a difficult year, very challenging, all the health conditions. We had to change our way of working. We had to change the way we interact with others, with families, in the professional environment. And it was difficult. And actually, we adapted quickly. For us as a bank, actually, it was challenging even before that because we are being disrupted. Many actors from outside the financial industry coming with a lot of innovation, bringing new services, sometimes without any regulatory weight that we start seeing as a bankers everywhere in the world with heavier conditions. And we have to react also, as I said, in this special year, because we have to bring new services, we have to bring innovation, and we still have to lower costs. And this is extremely challenging, but we're going to face it and we're going to prevail.
So thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, technology is now playing a big role, right? With all the transformation happening around us in our lives and how we work. So my question for you is, how is your IT strategy and vision playing out to help with that digital transformation that you're seeing in financial services and for your company specifically? And then also, how do you partner with vendors like Nutanix to help enable that digital transformation?
Actually, when we look today, technology is changing the world. Technology is business everywhere. Technology is powering business. If I step back and we look to Societe Generale as a bank, for a bank, technology is the factory. It's the heart, it's the living heart of the company. And this is today the way of, that is more disrupting the way we deliver services to our end users and to our clients. By the way, for a company like Societe Generale, when I say technology is the heart, that's why we have dozens or thousands of technology specialists. We put a huge amount of budget to do that because we believe in the power of technology. So when you look at it, and especially I will just speak about the transformation in the last decade. Basically, around 2014, we started our cloud journey, because nowadays the cloud is changing the way we look to the innovation. It changed the way we transform. It's up to time to market, it's scalability, it's resiliency, it's the way we change and we use our disaster recovery sites. There's a lot about it. So we started in 2014. It started with the first cloud generation, but now it's continuing. And just 1 year after, in 2015, we picked up Nutanix as a key player, as a key actor in this transformation. If I take some figures today, we are more than 70,000 plus virtual machines. Nutanix is powering up more than 2/3 of this, especially on the storage part. The product is scalable. The product is powerful. The way we interact together are very good. The support is very good, but it does not stop there, because the transformation have to go on, to move forward. We expect also from Nutanix new services, new products, not only on Nutanix, but other partners. But we have to move forward because we have to scale up this transformation.
Thank you, Khaled, for this. Actually, that's a nice transition from Monica's question. So can you talk about your specific hybrid multi-cloud vision and strategy for the next fiscal year and beyond?
Okay, so let's step back a little bit. Actually, I said that for the last 5 to 6 years, we've been transforming, starting our cloud journey. What we have done specifically is that we have built a private cloud platform with many services based mainly on APIs for our internal clients to come and consume it and deliver financial services behind it, because we're still a bank and a financial firm. We have roughly between 6,000 to 7,000 applications. These applications have to get transformed to go and consume and take the cloud advantages. I was speaking about time to market, to scalability, to resiliency, to burst. All of these, you have to transform all these applications, and it takes time and money. A third is that we are a bank. I spoke about regulation. When you say bank and regulation, you have data, confidentiality, data location, data gravity. You have to decide what can goes out, what have to stay in. So the question of private and public is not so easy. Okay, so little by little, our strategy become hybrid, because on one side because of regulation, because of cost, and sometimes because of technical aspect, we know that GAFAs have a huge power also to bring new innovative solution. So for this innovation, you have to get out and go to the public cloud. Sometimes we need this scalability or bursting. We have for financial closing, we have algorithm for risk calculation, and so we need, and we cannot provide all this compute power all internally. So we need both. So we have said our strategy is a hybrid cloud strategy. For the last 2 to 3 years, we have set up an external advisory board with some key technology leaders. It's about companies, not only because sometimes it's intuitive personas, some people that we target, and they come to discuss. We expose our strategy, we hear their constructive criticism, and we open up to say how to use that. And this is the way we think that we can achieve to deliver new services, interacting with the ecosystem, opening up to the ecosystem. But it's both. It's private and it's public. And as you said, Microsoft and Scott were there, Dheeraj for Nutanix were there, and interacting with these people, maybe we had the role to bring them together, because I understand you might have also new services. It's good for us. It's good for you, because we need this kind of innovation to also to move forward, especially giving the hard condition that we spoke about earlier on.
Khaled, you made so many amazing points, and I just, a couple of them really resonated. One is the innovation is ongoing, right? So just because you've been transforming for the last many years doesn't mean you stop now. And secondly, you said you expect more from the vendors that you're partnering with. So the question I'd ask you is, you heard about our Azure and Nutanix partnership, specifically around enabling our customers to lift and shift applications, from on-prem to public cloud if need be, to expand with cloud-native services, existing applications, or build new ones, to create DR on the public cloud if need be, right? And also to burst into cloud for additional capacity. So there's multiple use cases we are now enabling, and you're very right. Vendors, we do need to deliver more services, and that's exactly what we'll be doing with Azure. So I'd love your perspective on the partnership. How do you think that could benefit an organization like yours?
Once you have decided that you will have a strategy based on hybrid cloud, okay, we said that. Now we have to implement it. It's very easy to say, it's very complex to put in operation because you have to build it, you have to operate it, you have to secure it, you have to monitor it from A to Z. As I said, we are in a regulated environment, so we have to be in charge of the security. You have to look to your data location and gravity, connection between databases, between data lakes, and so on. And doing this, executing this strategy, this is the point where we need partners, where we need Nutanix, where we need Azure, and so on. It's going beyond having a strategy, it's the execution.
It's amazing. Speaking of vision and strategy, but has to come with execution. Thank you for everything, Colette, and thank you for Monica for a great session. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next guest defines what it means to be a thought leader. His first book inspired a movement in business where you had to start with the why before you got to the what and the how. His most recent work, The Infinite Game, was published before COVID, but it's very much become a guidebook for leaders trying to navigate these uncertain times, not with short-term fixes, but with really holistic long-term thinking. So I'm delighted to hand over to author Simon Sinek. He's going to be in conversation with Dheeraj. Enjoy.
Thank you, Georgie. I'm really excited about this next segment. It's very apropos. It's just so timely to bring in someone who is so inspirational, so motivational, is an author, speaker, a frequent speaker in the TED circuit, and an optimist, which is what we need in this day and age. What we've gone through in the last 6 months, what we're going through in the next 6 to 12 months. And somebody that has celebrated a very simple and a very profound word called why. I'm a huge fan of his, Simon Sinek. He's finally here at .next. Honored and humbled. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks for having me.
Now, people ask the question, why? And I always say, look, this conference is about celebrating life, then celebrating design, and finally celebrating technology. Life's important, and we'd be remiss if we didn't start with life. The day and age that we're living, this era, is really humbled us as humankind. And to get someone like you to really start with that would be awesome. So with that, Simon, maybe my first question to you is, why? Why did you pick the word why to celebrate?
I got tired of having discussions with people about what comes first, vision or mission. You know, I'd have whole discussions that some people believe vision comes first, and some people believe mission comes first, and some people believe purpose comes first, and all these things. And what I realized is we all had different definitions for the same thing. And so I went up to the people who believe that vision is predominant, and I said, well, what's vision? They said, well, it's why we get out of bed in the morning. And I asked the people who believe mission comes first, and they said, well, it's why we do what we do. And basically, the more I talked to people about all these different things, the more I found out the definitions were all the same. So instead of debating what comes first, I said, let's call it the why. Now we can all agree. Now we know what comes first. And plus, I think it's probably the most important question to answer, which is very often we find ourselves doing things because maybe we're told to do them or we have a responsibility to do them. But, I think it's pretty powerful to stop and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? This is the foundation of fulfillment and more, and the ability to make true impact in the world.
So the why of life, I think you'd be remiss if we didn't start with life. We are in this unprecedented, one of the biggest pandemics in the last 100 years of human history. You've talked a lot about staying connected. You've talked a lot about humility. You've talked a lot about taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. Maybe we start with that. We have a resurgence of the virus in the US. We are at odds with each other. How do we really start being optimistic about what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, optimism is something that's deeply personal, but optimism is obviously something that can be inspired by our leaders. And one of the things we look to our leaders to do is provide hope. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of leaders make is they confuse positivity and optimism. Positivity is like everything's good, everything's fine, everything's good. It's the knee jerk seems that we want positive, but that's not really true, because it seems to ignore the fact that things aren't that positive all the time. Optimism is different. Optimism is not the denial of the current state. It's the belief that the future is bright. It's like saying we're in a dark tunnel and I don't know how long we're going to be in this tunnel. It's going to take us time to get out of this tunnel, but we're focused on the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to come out better and stronger when we get through it, and we're going to get through it together. And that's what optimism is. Optimism is a sense of hope in the future, even if the exact timing is uncertain.
And speaking of optimism and positivity, how do you connect this to everything that's happening with just social justice and fairness and what it means to democratize opportunity around us? It's a big part of organizational design. We think about justice and fairness, especially for the folks who are out there in the audience who are thinking about building teams. The why of the teams, the how of the teams. How do they go about reaching out to historically Black colleges, thinking about gender in IT? It's a big deal. We are not that good when it comes to gender and diversity, and not just diversity, but inclusion in technology. Tell us a little bit about how we go about designing our organizations before we go design our products.
Well, I think you just said it. It has to be designed. Very often our teams happen by default rather than by design. We look for people who we know through our friends. We look through people who we know through our colleagues. We look through people who look like us and sound like us because it's familiar and comfortable. And so we end up getting a team by default. Design means thinking about the kind of team we want to have and the importance of diversity of perspective and experience and point of view. And different people would bring different solutions to bear. And what makes great teams and what makes teams better at solving problems is that it's not just one mode of thought or one. It's like you would never want to just hire people from one university. It's the same idea. Like diversity of thought really matters. And when we have access to people who have such a vast depth of experience and a different way of living their lives, that can come to bear in such huge positive way. But to your point, it has to be designed. You have to do it consciously. And very often I think we forget about that. We say, we look for a set of criteria without considering the kind of person.
So thinking about this pandemic, and then we talk about the conference, the theme of the conference is all together now, careers and families and technology, bringing it all together. Do you think that this pandemic is going to bring us together, or is it going to help, really engender a deglobalization where everybody's going to fight for the vaccine and everybody's going to fight for their stuff? Like, how do you think of the coming 12 months?
I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is reminded us of some of the goodness and the importance of togetherness. I get asked the question very often, how has leadership changed in these COVID times? And the answer is it hasn't. Good leadership is good leadership. If anything, COVID has reminded us of what good leadership looks like. So, for example, well-intended, but maybe sometimes less effective leaders, but well-intended good human beings, when COVID happened, the first thing they did was pick up the phone and check in on their people. One by one, they called the team and said, how are you doing? I just want to check in on you and make sure you're okay. My question is why don't you do that all the time? If somebody's having performance issues, why don't you pick up the phone and call them up and say, hey, how you doing? I just want to check in on you, make sure you're okay. Like, that's just good leadership. And we're seeing a lot of good leadership happen in many places because it's becoming very human. We're realizing the importance of how much we need each other and how much better brainstorming is, for example, when we're actually in a room together. It's very hard to have a really great brainstorming, even over Zoom. And I think we realize things we took for granted, just how important they are. So I'm hoping some of the good habits we're recognizing, that we preserve them and cling on to them once we come out of this.
Our vision statement is make computing invisible anywhere. And we've added the word anywhere. We'll get to that because we believe in what you believe in, infinite game. This is about really taking our software and not thinking of the zero-sum mindset. where all computing is going to be rented or all computing is going to be owned. We think the pendulum will come and rest in the middle. There's going to be a hybrid world where people will own some, people will rent some. So this idea of making computing invisible anywhere is the theme of this conference, and has always been the theme of the company, the why of this company for the last decade. I've been a big student of your infinite game mindset, the book, everything. Tell us more about what made you write the book.
Well, many years ago, I was introduced to the work of Dr. James Carse, a philosopher. And in the mid-1980s, he wrote a little book called Finite and Infinite Games, in which he defines these two kinds of games. And he said finite games are games that have known players, fixed rules, and an agreed-upon objective. Football, baseball, there's always a beginning, middle, and an end. And if there's a winner, there has to be a loser. And then you have infinite games. Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players, which means new players can join at any time. The rules are changeable, which means you can play however you want. And the objective is to perpetuate the game, to stay in the game as long as possible. And when I read Dr. Carse's work, I realized that we're players in infinite games every day of our lives, whether we know it or not. There's no such thing as being the winner of education. No one wins education, right? There's no such thing as being declared the winner of careers. And there's definitely no such thing as winning business. And yet, if you listen to so many leaders, they talk about being number one, being the best, and beating their competition. Based on what? Based on what agreed upon objectives, based upon what agreed upon timeframes, based upon what agreed upon metrics. They aren't there. And so what I found so interesting is there are so many leaders building their companies to be first in a game that has no finish line. And when we play with a finite mindset in an infinite game, when we play to win in a game that has no finish line, there's some very predictable and consistent outcomes: the decline of trust, the decline of cooperation, the decline of innovation. And so it sort of made me smile that so many of us were playing with the wrong mindset for the game we're in, playing for the wrong rules for the game we're actually in. So this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, which is we have to completely reconfigure our mindset for the game we're actually playing.
You talk about the just cause in your infinite game, which is one of your big pillars, one of the 5 pillars of the infinite game is the just cause. Tell us about how software companies should think about that just cause in the coming years ahead, where IT is growing at the speed of GDP. So you could look at this as a zero-sum mindset. IT used to grow 5 to 6 times GDP 20 years ago. And it's a finite set of dollars being spent. How do you really think of the customer rather than just trying to steal somebody from another pillar that you talk about is a worthy rival? You don't think of this stealing something from a worthy rival, but working with them in this just cause.
A just cause is an idealized vision of the future that does not yet exist, that we will devote all of our energy, all of our efforts, sometimes our product to help advance, and we'll never actually get there, but we'll die trying. That's the point. It's idealism. That's what vision is. And by the way, that's why we call it vision, because you can see it in your imagination. It's something you can see. And so when people say, our vision is to be number one, well, I don't even know what that looks like. So it's not really a vision. It's just some arbitrary goal. And so what a just cause is a cause so just we'd be willing to sacrifice our interests in order to advance it. And sacrifice can come in many different ways. Maybe I turn down a better paying job offer because I want to be a part of what we're doing here. Maybe it means working late hours and taking frequent business trips. I don't like those things, but they feel worth it. So that just cause is absolutely essential to play in the infinite game, because it is literally infinite. It goes on forever, and we start to measure our progress in terms of momentum or in terms of steps we're taking towards that just cause. It's not an absolute, as you said. It's not zero sum. And I think one of the big mistakes that software companies, many companies, make is they put themselves at the center of the equation. And if we go back to our Adam Smith believed that capitalism was about consumption, not about production. And we forget about the consumer, that the value we have in someone's life is only the value that they perceive. That if we somehow make their lives easier, or we add value, or this is where they perceive value. We've offered something that they want, need, or desire. And so when we think about them and we innovate to what people, the struggles that they're having or the opportunities that they have, they're more likely to want to use us. But very often, we force customers to fit our strategies rather than change our strategies to fit their wants, needs, and desires. This is a flaw. It might work in the short term. Steve Jobs was asked about this at a conference. He was asked about the movie industry. And he said that he was asked about the future of the movie industry. And he said the movie industry is making the same mistake that the music industry made years before, which is the music industry mistook their distribution channel for their customer. In other words, they were doing everything they could to appease HMV and Tower Records and all the big record stores that they served. But it ultimately was us who bought the albums that they should have been thinking about. And this is one of the reasons the music industry completely missed the fact that with the MP3, we moved away from being an album culture and we became a portable song culture. And it was Apple who invented iTunes and not the music industry, because they were so preoccupied with preserving their old business model. And they were so preoccupied with taking care of their distribution channel and ignoring their customer. And his point was that the movie industry has done the same thing, which is they've been so preoccupied with worrying about what movie theaters think that they've completely thought about the end user. And look what Netflix, a company completely outside the industry, is reinventing the industry. And this is one of the problems in incumbent mature industries, which is they become so self-involved and so preoccupied with themselves and so keen to preserve their old business models, ignoring the fact that what got you here won't get you there. And most disruption happens from the outside. It's a special thing when a mature company can disrupt its own industry. You can only do that when you're obsessed with your customer. But most companies are obsessed with themselves, or obsessed with their share price, or obsessed with their year-end goals. All of those things which distract from the customer.
It's fascinating you say that, and it's so apropos. Talk about HMV and Tower Records. This conference is to really try to figure out how our partners and our employees really look at the customer as the center of the universe. We have to really think about this one common end user who can fire us at any time that they feel like, which is probably at the core of IT as well. We go and consolidate technologies. Core of what we do in hyperconvergence is to consolidate. And as you consolidate, you are vulnerable to being fired by the end user and the customer. So thank you for saying that.
Thanks very much for having me.
For those of you who know me, you know how much respect I have for what Simon has done for all of us. I've learned so much, not just start with why, but I've learned so much about the infinite game. And his latest book, The Infinite Game, is all about the just cause. That's what making computing invisible anywhere is all about. It's about trusting teams. It's about a worthy rival. It's the fact that we know how to compete with ourselves. Our rival is us. It's no one else. It's the flexible playbook. And with how HCI is morphing from hyperconverged infrastructure to hybrid cloud infrastructure, we're now bringing that flexible playbook to a data center near you, to a cloud near you. And most importantly, the courage to lead. It's a timeless journey, this infinite game of taking hyperconvergence from an appliance to OEM servers, to pure software, to subscription, to now this portfolio that we have in front of us. There's all the stuff in data center, DevOps, and desktops. And finally, the fact that we're running it on both sides of the aisle. It's been a timeless journey. It's been this infinite game that as a company we have come to epitomize. We have taken everything around that was visible, things that were nuts and bolts of infrastructure, and we have made that into something invisible. That's been true of all the complexities of buying stuff, of using stuff, of really managing your IT operations around you. We have taken it from visible to invisible. And that's been an infinite game for the company. That's been a timeless journey for us. Thank you for being with me for the last 11 years in this journey of the invisible. As we did to computing and IT, when we took it from visible to invisible, personally, myself, I'm going from being a visible leader of this company to an invisible Nutant, a Nutant forever. Thank you.
Well, it's hard to believe it, but our first entirely virtual .next general session is almost at the end. I really hope that you've learnt loads from the guests, from the customers, from the product demos. Don't go anywhere just yet though, because we've got a jam-packed day full of breakout sessions and product test drives where you can just dive a little bit deeper into the content shared here. Then tomorrow, we'll be back for 2 more keynote sessions. Join Nutanix leaders and industry guests in a demo-filled session, showcasing the latest developments in hybrid and multi-cloud technology. And also hear real-world best practices from industry thought leaders on how we're bringing infrastructure, applications, data and cloud all together for a seamless hybrid and multi-cloud experience. Before we sign off here, have a little sneak peek of this afternoon's .next show and the much anticipated customer awards. We know you're all dying to find out who won, so keep your eyes peeled for any clues.
We're excited to be here with you during our first ever global .next Digital Experience.
This year, we're going to recognize winners in 4 different categories. The Cloud Trailblazers, which is an individual award for innovation. The Cloud Transformers, for a team that transformed their entire organization. DevOps Rockstars, an increasingly important aspect of our business. And of course, my favorite, the .Heart Giving Back Award. I got a little toast for them, to our winners and to our finalists tonight. Cheers.
Congratulations to everyone. Thank you so much, Inder.
I mean, that certainly looks like fun, but we'll have to wait to find out who'll be taking home those trophies. Or perhaps should I be saying who'll be receiving their trophies in the post. Make sure to catch the .next show this afternoon to celebrate the winners, and right after the awards, we've got a very special musical guest, Butterscotch. You won't want to miss that. Have a great day here at the global .next Digital Experience.